Welcome to Reluctantly Supernatural in an Age of Reason, the podcast where we explore the place of the supernatural gifts of the Holy Spirit in our lives and in the church. Our hosts, Pastors Mark Cowpersmith and Bob Maddox, combine their years of ministry experience to address the issues of the prophetic gifts in our modern world. Join us as they interview their guests from a wide variety of spiritual leadership backgrounds, as they share their insights on the place of the supernatural in the church and the world. And now, our hosts, Mark Cowpersmith and Bob Maddox.
Welcome to this second podcast with Marti Souza from Voice of Triumph Church in Fremont, California. In the first episode, she told us about her early encounters with angels and a particularly profound encounter with an angel. And we left it off at that point because it was dramatic and the rest of the story is incredible, but far more incredible than probably you're prepared for. We often ask the question, why do angels appear to people? And oftentimes we don't have an answer. In this instance, we have an answer. Something happens in this encounter, which leads to an encounter with Jesus that changed the rest of Marti's life and ministry.
So, which I had never seen that before. This was the first time I've ever encountered the Lord this way, or the angelic. So this was my first time seeing the angels like in this particular moment with my eyes that I had to, I was in almost feeling like, am I here? Am I here? So what happened is I had been asleep. My husband leaves to work at 6 a.m. and he normally always kisses me goodbye. So I remember him saying, goodbye, honey. And usually my husband has a period of, when he kisses me, he has like a period of 10 minutes and then I hear the door close. So then that means he got his coffee and he left. And so I was laying there, and because of the pain, I had like 3 pillows up. So it was I was in excruciating pains through my body. So I had to sleep up. So in that moment, as he closes the door to our bedroom, the Lord shows up. The angel shows up. And really transparent. He's very transparent, lucid, a transparent being.
Like light.
Very light. Yeah. A lot of light. So he was the portrait angel was a very, very tall angel. Very, in my dream, he was my encounter was he was blonde. He had the same sash across his chest, Psalm 91. And so it's the same angelic being. And so he begins to speak and he says, I have a message for you. And literally I was rubbing my eyes to see if I was in a dream. The part that really came to me was that I wasn't scared. I was expecting to be scared because most of us that we read the word, we say, there were this fear to see an angel, right? And the angel says, do not
fear not.
Fear not. Do not be afraid. That's always the sentence they say. But in this case, I was not afraid. I was very peaceful seeing the angelic. And he was particularly saying, I've come here to deliver a message to you. You're about to receive a message. And I thought that was interesting. And I said, well, what is the message? He said, we'll know soon. And I just looked, I think I was so in awe of the beauty and the angelic sight that I was before. But he's just said, he didn't even give the message. He just prepared the way. So angels always prepare the way. Luke chapter 2, right? It talks about how Gabriel came to prepare the way for Jesus, right? So I felt there was a Luke 2 moment where he just said, I've come to prepare that there's a message coming to you. And I thought, well, in my mind, my logical mind was like, well, what is the message?
Give it to me.
Give it to me. What's the message? But he didn't. He said, it's coming soon. And so he walked away literally through the wall. He just walked through the wall. And I thought, wow. So
how did you feel? How did you feel about this experience? What was your emotional response to this?
I think I didn't have time to think. there was no, I think I was so caught up in what was happening that I didn't really feel. I was just more trying to understand what was happening in that moment. And as he walked away, I felt something on my left side of my bedroom, and someone walked through the wall into the bedroom. That's what I felt. And as I looked to my left, it was, I remember just looking up, and it was the Lord. Wow. The Lord was standing there, and I had to look up. And as he walked right in front of me, he just walked through the bed. So he's spirit, right? So he just walked through everything. And so he's standing in front of me, and I am I'm sitting up like this in my, like sleeping. Most of us can sleep almost sitting. So he's standing in front of me, and I just can look, he's tall, beautiful. And I started to shake from the presence that he was, he carries. He was beautiful. I saw his beautiful hair, long hair. He was not in white. He was wearing a purple robe, a beautiful purple robe. And as he walked towards me, he looks down, and he didn't say anything. He just wanted me to look at him. And as I stared into his eyes, I just grabbed onto the garment, to his robe, at the bottom of the robe. And it's almost like he was standing there, but he was, all of a sudden, he's up higher. So his feet were right there in front of me, like if he was standing on top of the bed, but really just there for me to feel the bottom of his feet. And so I grabbed to his robe, and I looked at him, and when I lifted the robe, I saw his feet. And of course, I saw the nails on his feet, the marks of the nails on his feet. And I just grabbed onto the feet, and I screamed. This is where the spirit groans, and my spirit groaned and yelled I grabbed his feet, and it just was, there's no words. There were no words. It was just spirit to spirit. And I just yelled at the top of my lungs. Like I could feel like we were relating. He wanted me to relate to his suffering. And so I was just grabbing onto that, to his feet, to his garment. I didn't want to let go.
Were you feeling his suffering?
I was feeling his suffering. I was feeling what he suffered. He said, his communication is not through lips, he spirit to spirit. And I was feeling his suffering. I was experiencing what he felt, and he was feeling what I was feeling. And that moment, that's where the emotional came up. So where the suffering and understanding that this is part of life, this is part of the journey, this is part of something that we have to sometimes walk as believers. And he was comforting me, letting me know that I was going to be okay. So I looked into his eyes. He wanted me to look into his eyes. He said, look into my eyes. Without his lips, of course, spirit to spirit. He said, look into my eyes, Marti. And I looked into his eyes, and he said, what do you see? And your authority. I see your authority. And he said, yes, you have the same authority. Now I want you to use it. And that was it. And then he walked away right through the wall. The same wall.
So let's look at the point of this encounter.
Yeah.
What I'm taking away is he made sense of your suffering. In other words, when we suffer, the first question we often ask is why? Why is this happening to me?
Right.
And we rarely get an answer to that. So we have a sense of meaningless, pointless, purposeless suffering. I'm just in pain.
Right.
And he comes along and gives you an experience of his suffering, which makes sense of yours and puts it in the context of, I'm putting words in his mouth now, so don't just, if it doesn't make sense, don't buy it. But He's communicating to you that suffering is a part of life. You just experienced and shared in a tiny little portion of his suffering, and it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
And he makes sense of your suffering because now you understand him better.
Mm-hmm.
Now your suffering isn't pointless.
Right.
It's empathy. It's a union with Jesus. Remember, Paul said in Philippians, such a radically crazy thing to say, all I care for is to know Christ, to share in his sufferings. So Paul's equating knowing Jesus with sharing in his sufferings. You don't know him until you understand his suffering. Yeah. And he just gave you the gift of understanding his suffering, which then makes more sense of your own. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was like you said, a communion. You would think after that experience, and I think that was in the encounter, I felt great. There was no pain. That's one thing I noticed. There was no pain at all. The minute he walked away, I still had the pain. I began to.
The pain returned.
With the return of the pain. And I said, I thought you would heal this now. Right?
Why did we do this? Why did I have to? If you're not going to heal me, why did we do this?
Right. And I said, I just had the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords in my room. I just had this amazing encounter. And I thought, oh, for sure, this pain is going to go. But it was there. It was when he walked away, it ended. And in that moment, I also knew how long the encounter was. Because remember when my husband kissed me goodbye?
10 minutes.
It was 10 minutes. My husband, when the Lord left the room, Jim closed the door. I heard the front door close. And so I said, whoa, that's how I recognized how long it was. But also the pain didn't go away. He wanted me to understand that this is a partnership, that healing sometimes is not going to come through just the receiving the encounter. He imparted something. He imparted and deposited the authority that I needed to recognize in my own walk so that I could partner and co-labor with him, because we're co-heirs with him, right? So he reminds us that we are seated in heavenly places with him. And so with that, he said, you need to co-labor with me. This is not going to come like a overnight healing. You're going to declare things. You're going to take authority over the sickness, take authority over areas that in your life, you will recognize authority to heal, not just your life, Marty, but the lives of others that are going to be healing.
This is a Marty, very profound thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember when David took Jerusalem. The text says that the Lord left one of the ites. What were the Amorites or the Jebusites? I can't remember right now, but it says he left some of the ites there so that so Israel would learn how to fight. Maybe it wasn't taking Jerusalem, but it was in one context where the Lord took care of all the enemies except one group, and he left that one group so that the people would learn to fight.
Yeah.
And there's an analogy there with your experience where he's saying, yeah, you're going to get healing, but it's not going to be all me. You're going to cooperate with it by discovering and using your authority. And in so doing, you're not just going to help you through your sickness. You're going to have authority to help others through theirs. And so it's like you say, we often, I don't want to take this thing over, but I'm really excited about this. We always think of healing as it's just for me. But in this case, the healing was an acquisition of spiritual authority that you were going to need for your healing, but you're going to need it for your entire ministry for the rest of your life. So the big point of this wasn't just the visit or something. The big point was the impartation of spiritual authority.
That was just stunning to hear what happened to Marty, and she had a personal encounter with the Lord, and something that I think all of us would want to have. Certainly It happened in the Bible, and throughout history, it's happened to people. And this is just the beginning of an ongoing saga, because as we ended on this point, there's so much more. And if you go to the next episode, you'll hear more of what happened. But we hope that these podcasts are stirring you to want to seek more of God's supernatural power. I think of the apostles when they were trying to heal this young man, and they couldn't deliver him from demons. And Jesus came down from the mountain, and he said to them, because of your lack of prayer, you're not being able to, and your lack of faith, you're not being able to encounter and affect, things in a supernatural way. And he was pushing them forward to pray, to seek more, to go after spiritual things, the same way Apostle Paul did the same thing. And in our book, Reluctantly Supernatural, we talk about how God desires for us to desire these spiritual gifts. And we're not always going to have encounter with angels, but certainly I hope, and I know Mark does too, that this will cause you to be hungry for more of God's supernatural power in your life.
You've been listening to the Reluctantly Supernatural podcast with your hosts, Mark Cowpersmith and Bob Maddox. Be sure to check out our website at www.reluctantlysupernatural.com or visit our YouTube channel, Reluctantly Supernatural, for more videos and podcasts. To get a copy of our book, Reluctantly Supernatural in an Age of Reason, you can purchase it at Amazon.com or order it directly from us at our website, www.reluctantlysupernatural.com.